Yeah, I know. I was trying to think of topics for us to talk about in terms of like, I mean, I think the big thing we've been doing recently has been a lot of the relationship stuff. And it was one that kind of popped into my head as I was thinking of like, guys topics. Um, because it is an interesting one. And I think how we value beauty is pretty high in our culture. And it made me think about how, truly how much like not only women value it for themselves, but how men also value it. So
Right.
I guess I have some thoughts on it, but I'll definitely let you kind of jump in and see what you think. Like, what's like when you think about historically, like your outlook on a woman, and you think about the value of beauty in terms of even ranking criteria. What's
I,
kind of your initial thinking?
I was gonna say, when you say value, do you mean like a ranking, like a number value, or how do you?
I guess I mean like let's say you
Like,
meet a woman, right? And you're like, okay, hey, she's great, blah blah blah, but she's not as pretty as I'd like, or I'm not as attracted to her as I think. But like, how guys sometimes will go, oh, this girl isn't that great, but she's so beautiful that we then go, well, it's to work out. Like we kind of we rationalize it. And I mean, listen, like women do that too, but meaning I think men do that at a much higher level. Where if we meet a beautiful woman, it's kind of all that matters, so to speak. So not so much like how much more beautiful one woman is versus another, but how you personally value beauty.
so I think it all has to do with one or two things, and that's age and maturity.
Okay.
Um, because I think naturally, everybody kind of gravitates to what they're attracted to, right? And I
For
think
sure.
it's an obvious statement that you're probably not going to want to settle down with someone that you're not attracted to, right? So I mean that's super important, and that's usually the first thing that people notice. However, I think with age and maturity, and as you go through life, you kind of realize that there are so many more things that are important, and I mean that's almost last on the totem pole. So I've got a lot of guy friends that are they're looking for their wife, but they're looking for, in my opinion, the wrong things.
Right. And I guess that brings up the course of thinking is that like why is it that they're looking for the wrong things?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, I think it's a lack of experience, right? I mean, I think when you experience life with somebody, you realize that there are a million things that are more important than attraction, in my opinion. So, I mean, all the things that we've talked about before, right? Whether it's how they solve problems, how they deal with certain things. I mean, I just think all of those things are so much more valuable than attraction.
Now, look, I mean, again, I think I agree, and I think from a fundamental level, um, at the highest level of maturity, when you're thinking about these things, that's exactly how you should think of it.
Yep.
I think what I've thought about recently and also historically has been this idea of, but how do you get to the place of spending your life with someone if you're clouded by the judgment of how beautiful or attractive you are to them? So for example, right? Let's say me being single recently, I could be on a dating app, let's say, for example, and I could be swiping through profiles, and then I come across a girl and like, she's not like the hottest girl. But like, okay, and I pretty much give everybody a chance. I'll read everyone's profile. I'll look through everything, and I'll really try to do what we're talking about. I'll dissect like how where they're from, how old they are, height, education, job, the whole thing. But what I find myself doing sometimes is that like there could be a girl who's perfect on paper but not as attractive, and there's a girl who
Of
has
course.
nothing on paper but is super attractive, and I'll kind of like, let's say, swipe the hot girl and not the other girl.
Of course.
Now now obviously, again, we can make the argument that that's because this is a virtual thing. I'm not meeting these people. I'm not getting um attached to them in the real world. I'm just like looking at two things and going, okay, well, let's go with this one, right? But that's the problem. And there's times where I've literally done that. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I'm like disappointed in myself, although I know that I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. And I think one thing that happens a lot is if you find yourself in a situation where you're spending a lot of time with somebody,
Yeah.
you're you're starting to enjoy spending that time with somebody. I think then, naturally you kind of forget about looks. But I think when it's new and you're, on a dating app or something like that, naturally the first thing you think about is
Right.
physical attraction.
Well, and so again, so I'll start playing a little bit more devil's advocate and put you in maybe some scenarios and see how kind of you think about it. But
Hit me.
because it's a fun, I think it's a fun exercise to at least go down this thought process of that. I've made the example in the past to people that being an incredibly beautiful woman is worth $1 billion. And the reason I say that is because if you're attractive enough, you could attract a billionaire. And if that guy says, hey, I want to date you, you can live a billionaire's lifestyle because just on the basis that he thinks you're attractive, right? So think about how many, even without the extreme stories of like, the Anna Nicole Smith type thing, but how many of the Jeff Bezos of the world, right? Like might find some new attractive person and go, I like this person. Now that person's not thinking, what are they bringing to the table? Because there is technically nothing that you bring to the table enough. But
Sure.
that girl who's attractive enough for that guy now gets to live the lifestyle of private jet, yacht, the whole thing. And again, this is complete stereotyping, but if you think about the logic that I'm going down, is that without becoming a billionaire, that woman gets to live the lifestyle of a billionaire because that guy was attracted to her.
Right. I think the big difference there, though, is that the average male that is, or the average person that is not a billionaire,
Yep.
they need their partner to bring certain things to the table. Whereas, well, and I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know. Do billionaires need emotional support and all the things that we do? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, of course they do, right? But that's, again, I guess the thought exercise is the idea that although we all do, how about this? How many men who aren't even billionaires will literally leverage themselves to the hilt to just hang out with a hot girl? They'll buy a car that they can't afford. They'll go get bottle service that they can't afford. They'll
Yep.
buy, they'll take this person out on trips. They'll give them money because they go, I believe that this person thinks that they deserve this kind of lifestyle. So if I don't provide it, then I'm not going to get this girl, right?
For sure.
So that person will go out and spend lavishly, even if they don't have it. So you could make the case that, look, the billionaire can afford it, right? The average guy who's just spending all this money. And I've met tons of girls who have like, oh yeah, like I met this guy and he was doing X, Y, and Z, but he would always give me money and take me here and do this. And in my mind, I knew based on the backstory, the guy didn't have tons of money. Right. So he's leveraging himself, putting, going into debt and putting things on credit cards to just have fun with this girl. Right. So I guess the thought exercise is that it's not so much that what the billionaire is thinking, it's more the idea that because we value beauty so high, is it possible that being a super attractive woman is legitimately worth $1 billion?
It's tough. You have a valid point, but I guess it just depends on who you ask. Because to me, the answer is no.
No, and I agree with you. And I think that most people, once you go down that path, look, if you're with a girl who, you can't have a conversation with, you can't have fun with, after a while, it doesn't matter how hot you are.
It sounds awful.
Right. But we're thinking ahead, right? So meaning if you took the hottest girl you ever thought of growing up or as an adult, and you were like, okay, so let's play that game. Like who is kind of like one girl, if you had to say like celebrity, model, whoever it is, who's the hottest girl you could kind of think of?
I don't know. If you want to be extreme, Carmen Electra.
Okay, so Carmen Electra in her prime was awfully hot, right?
She was.
Okay, so say Carmen Electra wants to hang out with you, likes you, wants to, and she just wants to hang out, and like you don't have to do anything more than what you've been doing, right?
Done.
But you go, it's done, right?
Done.
But now if she's annoying or she's, you don't have a great time talking to her, she's not fun or whatever it is, do you instantly just go, hey, I don't think this is working out?
I ride it out for a little bit.
Okay, so then now the question is, what's a little bit?
I don't know. I think it just depends on people's agendas, right? There's some guys that just want to have the arm candy and show that off, and they'll tolerate as much as they can for as long as they can.
Okay.
For me, until the excitement of it being Carmen Electra wears off.
For sure. Well, okay, so then once it wears off, so then you guys break up. Now you're single again. So what happens when the next version of Carmen Electra comes along and goes, oh, Brian, hey, what's up? Do you go, no, I'm good? Or do you go down that route a little bit?
I'd like to say that I would say that I'm good because I learn from mistakes and I like to only, do that one time. However, if I'm being realistic, it's always, I think you're always more prone to give somebody a shot or to give them even if
Right.
you know better, because they look so good,
Sure.
you know?
Right. And so and I think that's the kind of the case here, right? Is that like I think as men, our instinct of, kind of going out and finding the hot girl, the arm candy, being the hunter, whatever it is, um, it clouds more of that judgment. So sure, if I give you a big enough sample size and you spend enough time with a person, of course now it's gonna like change the dynamic. But the idea is that, why is it that even the idea of arm candy exists, or that we can both recall tons of stories of a billionaire dating some young girl or some older guy dating a young girl. That's not happening because all these young girls are super cool and fun and funny and they get it, right? It's that that guy just wants someone hot around. He wants to, have a hot partner. He wants to be able to show his friends like, yo, like, but meaning if that girl didn't work to earn that lifestyle, in essence, her beauty earned it for her.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, I think ego is a factor also, right? I mean, if you're not the most confident guy in the world, there's always a little, maybe a little shock factor or a little boost in your confidence where you're like, and I'll be honest, so I'm not going to mention any names, but I was approached by a girl once, and like literally, I'm like, there's literally no way that this girl is like, she must be on drugs talking to me. You know what I mean? Um, and long story short, we started hanging out, and the same exact thing happened. I mean, very sweet girl, but it just, it was very hard to have a conversation, and
Sure.
that can only last so long. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So eventually, it kind of, things like that just kind of fade away. But there was that whole, kind of boost in self-confidence, like, holy shit, I literally can't believe that this girl's even entertaining talking to me.
Yeah.
You know?
And still, so that's what I mean. I guess, as you obviously as a mature guy, you can kind of look at the big picture and say, okay, this isn't providing enough value.
There's no
But
way
I
it'll
think
work.
that, the idea also becomes that, how about this? Now let me flip the scenario and say, how many girls might you know or have heard of who felt that they deserve something more than they've earned because they're beautiful? Like,
Oh, almost, I mean, a large majority of them.
okay. So then
Friends
now,
of mine, personally.
sure. So then, okay, so give me an example of that. Like, say a friend of yours that you might know without naming names, like if they're beautiful, what's a thing that they thought that they've earned or deserve?
I mean, being that I live in Las Vegas and you would agree, you live in LA. I mean, I think, and this, not to speak poorly of anyone, but just literally friends of mine. I mean, I think girls that are good looking know that they're good looking. They just think they can get away with a lot that most people wouldn't, whether that's being rude, whether that's being, um, whether it's thinking that they don't have to pay for anything just because they're hot, or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're all buddies, we're going out and we're, celebrating your birthday. Like,
Yeah.
you think you don't have to pay for the food that you ate.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're not dating.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it happens all the time.
Well, and see, I think, and that's what I mean. I think, is did that person become that way because that's naturally who they are? Or did they become that way because that's kind of what the market told them they should expect?
I would assume the latter.
Right.
Yeah.
So meaning, and I think this is kind of where the conversation gets interesting, is that how much of that motivation to be that person is because of what you've experienced in the world. I mean, look, like if you're an attractive woman and your whole life people have just offered to pay for everything that you've ever wanted, is it fair to go, well, yeah, I understand why they kind of expect it because it's how we've always lived. It
That's
doesn't make
fair.
it right.
That's fair.
Right. It definitely doesn't make it right, but it's like in your mind, in your psyche, you may actually believe like, well, it always happens that way.
Right.
So why would this time be any different? So you as the friend go, well, wait a minute, we're not dating, like we're friends. But like if I'm so conditioned to know that like, well, oh what, wait a minute, you don't want to pay, like, or you don't want to do this with me, or you don't, that's a shock, right? So
yeah, that's
and
fair.
and so that's what I mean. If you think about the idea that because it becomes conditioned and then you start to expect it, and then the more that you expect it, the more like whoever is going to be a part of it is going to condition it, then that creates a cycle where in some ways we start to value just the characteristic of beauty so high that we're not looking at, you could meet a girl who's super intelligent or super funny or super talented, and you're
Perfect.
never going to value any of those things remotely as close as her beauty.
Right. Because she's
Whereas
got
on the other side, right. Whereas on the other side, people do value that for a guy. Like a guy can be really attractive, but if he's, dumb, you kind of devalue him more. Whereas if he's smart or funny or talented or whatever, then that boost becomes exponential. Whereas for a woman, it really doesn't.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to hear the opinion of females on this because I do feel like they give us guys a lot more leeway. If a guy is funny and maybe he's overweight, they could see past the overweight because he makes her laugh.
Sure.
I don't think guys are as good as at doing that.
Right. And then say at the extremes, there could be a situation where we say, in the most extreme situation, a super beautiful woman who had nothing else would still attract way more guys than a really handsome guy who had nothing else would attract girls.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that means, again, kind of the market forces of saying, how valuable is a beautiful woman is pretty high, and again, so sure, maybe even my billionaire example is, or $1 billion example is a little bit overstating, but it's to make the effect that, like, theoretically, if you're a hot enough woman, right,
you have a lot more opportunity.
You could get any guy that would want, who'd be focused on beauty at the moment.
Yeah,
that's a pretty incredible characteristic to have, right? And yet, for most people who are at that level, you didn't really earn the beauty. Like, you can enhance it and you can go to the gym and put on nice clothes. You can do all those things, but you were kind of born who you were. And so by just, being who you are, you're getting these incredible experiences, lifestyles, benefits. I mean, that's, I guess. So again, maybe this is a conversation to be continued in another show with maybe with the girls, but it's an interesting thought exercise.
It's fascinating. I mean, I couldn't imagine, being born with something that was out of my control and it's just what I'm always used to, and just having all these opportunities thrown at me because of it,
Yeah. And so, like you said, living in Vegas and me living in LA, we've known girls who were like that, where, I mean, so again, not to devalue that it's not like you do nothing. You wake up and, like, girls have to work out. They, put on makeup, they shop, they, have enhanced themselves in some ways. And so, like, you enhance your beauty, but for the most part, the baseline is the baseline, right? So, that's pretty incredible, benefit to have that then can be leveraged in pretty extreme ways if you wanted it to be.
For sure.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Khalil. Thank you so much for listening to this video. I definitely want you to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more content like this. But if this content had any value to you, click the like button as well.